Music, dance, theater. It's time to take a seat on the aisle with Tom Alvarez. Hear from performers, producers, presenters, and creators who enrich our lives in the performing arts. Who's on stage? Here is Tom Alvarez to introduce you.
Hello and welcome to On the Aisle with yours truly, Tom Alvarez. My guest on today's episode is Tania Castroverde Moskalenko, Chief Executive Officer of the Sarasota Performing Arts Center. Previously, Tania was Executive Director of the Miami City Ballet. Join me now as I go on the aisle with Tania, a nationally recognized arts and cultural leader. I'm thrilled to have Tania Castroverde Moskalenko on my podcast. This has been a long time coming. You know, we've been friends for a long time, and it's just great to see you and to reconnect with you. Thank you.
Thank you. It is so wonderful to see you again.
And, I can't wait to catch up. Okay, just for our listeners, I like to recount from my guests, especially those I've known a long time, our history, because it's very rich, actually. We met in Carmel, Indiana, when were you the CEO, president? Was that the title?
President and CEO, that's correct.
Of the Center for the Performing Arts in Carmel, Indiana, which is part of it's metropolitan Indianapolis, but Carmel certainly has made a name for itself. It's certainly not a bedroom community anymore. And then you moved to Chicago, same title at the Auditorium?
Yes, at the Auditorium Theater.
Then you went on to work for the Miami City Ballet, and we have a connection there too, which we'll get into. And now, tell our listeners what your title is and where you're located now.
So I am Chief Executive Officer of the Sarasota Performing Arts Foundation in Sarasota, Florida. So now I'm on the other side of the state.
Yeah, so what a trajectory that career has been, and before you came to Carmel, the movement from one place to the next seems like, having known you and the way you operate professionally, it's as if you had a plan and you're following it, and there's no end to it, it seems.
Oh, well, that's so kind of you to say, but sometimes we stumble upon these opportunities. And I have always said that when opportunity knocks on the door, you walk through them, and that sometimes is a scary idea, and it does take a little courage to walk through those doors. But I have found that to be what has transformed my life professionally. And it has allowed me to live in these amazing communities and these amazing cities and to do important work that inspires the community, transforms the community, engages the community with arts and culture, which my story, and the arts and culture have been transformational in my life and have provided me with incredible experiences.
Okay, well, let's back up and give me a brief thumbnail sketch of your background. You are a daughter of Cuban immigrants, and let's start there.
I'm happy to. So I am a Cuban immigrant myself. I was born in Havana, Cuba, and I came to the United States as a political refugee during President Johnson's freedom flights. Came to the United States in the late 60s, and I grew up in Miami. As you know, many Cubans settled in Miami, and grew up there, and then went to school in Memphis, Tennessee, which was my first time leaving Miami. But as a child, I was immersed in music because my mother was a pianist. And so that was my first introduction to the arts. And then I pestered my parents long enough until they put me in ballet classes. And then that became the art form that really resonated with me. And I just loved classical ballet. And so I studied dance all through my formative years, and then in high school, and then in college. I actually received a BFA in theater and dance from the University of Memphis. So I've always had this passion for the arts and a true belief of what the arts can do for individuals and communities and eventually in society. So I've been very devoted to the arts all my life. And then I sort of stumbled upon an opportunity to lead a very small performing arts center in Memphis. It was after I had graduated. And I discovered that I really loved curating experiences for the community. And I loved connecting the artists with community members because I could feel when that magic happened. And the greatest thing for me all these years is always looking at the faces of the audience members when they are really in the zone with an artist on stage. That's where magic happens. And that I've always considered those spaces to be hallowed ground. And audience members take that with them. And sometimes those experiences resonate for years. And so that's where I found my sweet spot in the arts and culture, is to ensure that I could create those experiences for
Is it
community.
difficult for you to walk away from ballet
It
as a professional, as
it
a professional
it
career?
always is, right? It always is, because it is such an intense, well, as all art forms are, right? Like the devotion, the dedication, the commitment for years is pretty intense. And so to walk away from it, you go from doing this every day, all day, to not doing it at all. And so I think it is difficult. But after I graduated from college and I did receive my BFA in theater and dance, I was introduced in college to contemporary dance, which was very new for me. And it was just such an eye opener to discover this entire art form within the same field of dance, but an entire new art form in history and movement quality. And so I was always in this place of discovery and really open to new thoughts and new ideas. So when I was in college, because of this discovery of contemporary dance, I went back to dancing and I started a small contemporary dance company, and I had an opportunity to perform and to choreograph. And I feel like that evolution really helped to get the life of a performer out of my system.
Okay. Okay.
And so around that time, I stumbled upon this opportunity to lead a very small performing arts center in Memphis. And I was doing both for a while. And it came to a head where, I mean, I didn't have enough time in the day to do everything I needed to do. And so I had to give a lot of thought to what I had to make a choice. And I had to give a lot of thought to that. And at that moment, I chose to go down the pathway of being on the other side of the curtain, so to speak, to be that connector, that curator, to build communities through the arts.
Well, you are married to Alexei, a former dancer. When did he come into the picture? And you have two lovely twins, and they're probably, I don't know, last time I saw you was like 10 years ago, so they've got to be like, I can't wait to hear about them. But
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
So Alexei came into the picture. Alexei, my husband, is a ballet dancer. He was trained at the Bolshoi Ballet in Russia from the age of 10. And then he danced as a professional dancer and defected to the United States when the Bolshoi was on a tour of the United States. And so this was already during perestroika, so it wasn't all cloak and dagger as some of the movies that we see. But he did stay in the United States and then worked as a dancer. I mean, performed in the United States for a long time and retired at the ripe old age of 43, retired as a dancer. But he has also stayed in the field of dance and still is involved in dance. The best way to explain it is that now Alexei is a scout for the next generation of ballet dancers. And so
yes.
he travels all over the world. I like to say that it keeps our marriage young, our 23-year marriage, because he gets to travel a lot. And he travels all over the world. He sees about between 12 and 15,000 ballet students a year.
What's the name of the organization?
It's
Remind me.
Youth America Grand Prix.
Yeah, and I recently saw a post on Facebook, either one of your posts or someone else, someone I know, who's associated with ballet. And wasn't there one recently, or did I get that wrong?
They did the finals. So they do the finals after they travel all over the world throughout the year. Then they do the finals in
They have the
April.
world's longest, like a record-breaking, what's it called?
The Grand Défilé.
Yes.
Yes, they bring
This
all
one
these.
broke records, right?
This year they had
Oh
510
my
ballet
God.
dancers on the stage. It was really remarkable. But, when we talk about disruptors, right, we like to think about businesses as disruptors. This Youth America Grand Prix nonprofit organization has truly been a disruptor in the field of ballet because in the old days, when I was training as a ballet dancer as a child, you had to have the financial means to get to New York or LA, the big cities, to be seen, to audition. And then you only went from one company to another, right? You couldn't really get in front of 20, 30, 40 companies. And what YAGP has done is that they've disrupted the model. They go to where the students are. And so that's why they travel to see the students all over the world. So imagine 12 to 15,000 kids a year all over the world. And so the model's been disrupted. And what happens is that, the talent rises to the top. And of those 12 to 15,000 students, about the top, I don't know, 5% end up going to the finals. And then they connect the students. They invite all of the dance teachers from all over the world of the big companies, right? We're talking about Paris Opera, National Ballet of Canada, American Ballet Theater. I mean, the large companies all over the world. They bring their school directors, and the school directors then have all the talent in front of them, and what they offer are scholarships. So they're not vying for money or trophies. What they're vying for are scholarships. And so somebody from Paris Opera can be looking at a kid from Bahia, Brazil, for example. So the kids, if they have the talent, it is an incredible platform for the kids to be seen and be offered scholarships to go back to those countries and finish studying. It's a really,
So it's
really,
like it's similar to people who are familiar with like theater showcases for students, and they bring in people from the professional theater world to take a look at them all at once, and they get opportunities out of that. Well, that's marvelous. So he's with that organization still.
yes, yes.
And tell me about the kids.
And the twins are about to turn 17.
Oh gosh.
So they're driving, and we will soon be empty nesters. And then I say to Alexei jokingly, I say, then I will just go travel with you all over the world. And while you work, I'll go shopping and visit museums.
So what
So,
are the kids involved in, or what are they interested in? What are they studying? What's happening?
so imagine that our daughter is very much involved with musical theater.
Okay.
And so she really is all in on that. And then our son, who is very talented physically, was a gymnast. And now that we moved to Sarasota, and Sarasota has a long history of circus arts, he is attending the Circus Arts Conservatory. So that's, those things keep them busy, and they're doing great.
Well, that's an example of the apple not falling far from the tree. I mean, it's in their blood clearly, right?
Yeah.
Performing.
Yeah.
Wonderful. You and knowing you and Alexei, you didn't push them into anything about, right? I'm sure you've
Well,
been,
we really didn't actually. I mean, they studied ballet when we were in Indiana, when we were in Carmel. They were studying ballet there. They were very little, if you remember. You met them when they were
yes.
4 years old. And we put them in ballet classes early on with Alona.
Oh,
Um,
yes. Yeah.
so they were studying there. And then when we moved to Chicago, they continued to study ballet for, I think, the first year we were there. But that's when they got into gymnastics. And so movement has always been part of what they do.
I have fond memories of the last time I laid eyes on you. You had the twins with you, and we had brunch in downtown Chicago
Oh,
somewhere.
wasn't that
And
fun? I
they were
remember
just,
that.
they were so sweet, so well behaved, and just really beyond their years. They were, I just will never forget. I fondly remember that experience. But let's go back to Carmel. So you left Memphis, and how did you find out about the center in Carmel, Indiana?
I had received a phone call from a colleague of mine letting me know about the opportunity in Carmel. And I spoke to there was a search firm that they had hired to do the search. And I spoke to the search firm, and you just go through the process.
So they had an interim in place because their very first CEO had moved on, and then Frank Basile, if I'm not mistaken, was the interim. And was that the case?
That was the case. That's correct.
And then, so the search committee brought you out and you dazzled them. And how long did you spend there?
I was in Carmel for 4 years.
Okay. Tanya, I have to tell you, I still cover and have since the day they opened. It's been over 10 years, if I'm not mistaken. And I love thinking, my thoughts are about you often about how they've built on what you started, though. I mean, and you were still on the ground floor of that organization and all the apparatus, the structure, you made that happen with great board, of course, great people to support you. But that must give you a sense of pride. Have you been back at all to see her?
It's so interesting. I have not been back, and I do need to go back because I know that Jeff McDermott, who's now the
Yes.
president and CEO, is doing such a remarkable job. And
Perfect for that job.
Everything has changed so much with
Yeah.
the new development that has happened in that area, with the ice rink that wasn't there when I was still there, that ice rink in the winter. All of that is just incredible what they have built on. And now they secured those naming rights, which is wonderful for the organization. So really proud of what they've done
Well, and
there.
also you played a hand in, and I thought of you the other night, and I saw Michael do his yearly performance with the Indianapolis Chamber Orchestra, Michael Feinstein. For those listening who don't know, that Michael is the artistic director of the Center for the Performing Arts, and his Songbook Academy Foundation is headquartered there. And his influence, I think we're finally seeing it. Well, he and Jim Brainerd, who you know quite well, the former mayor, two visionaries, the two of them. It's remarkable what they've done. It's a model. 180 roundabouts. I bet you missed those, don't you?
We have a few here in Sarasota, actually.
Do they? Well,
I think Jim Brainerd came. I think Jim Brainerd came here, and so Sarasota took a page from the playbook of Carmel.
Yeah, well, when you left, I thought, this is too soon, but you only know when it's time to move on, and then you went on from there to Chicago.
I
Oh
know.
my, and that in itself was what a coup. I mean, so talk about those Chicago years. How long were you there?
I wasn't there long enough, to be honest with you, not quite 3 years. But, when Chicago reached out to me, I really had never thought about moving to Chicago. And what I discovered was that I absolutely loved the city.
Yeah.
And the idea of leading an arts organization in what in the business you call a primary market, right? It's one of the major cities in the US.
And for those who don't know, tell me a bit about the auditorium and its history and background, just a bit. I mean, it's really quite prestigious.
It is one of the oldest theaters in Chicago. It was built in 1889. It was a project that happened to put the people of Chicago back to work. It was after the Great Fire, and they built it as the theater for the people. So if you look at the architecture of that theater, you will notice that there are no private boxes along the back of the theater or in any of the balconies.
Right.
So the architect, Louis Sullivan and Dankmar Adler, the architects wanted a theater that was truly a theater for the people. And so in the original design, there were boxes right along the side, but of course, those weren't great sightlines, because if you're sitting on the side, there's a lot that you don't see, especially as you get closer to the stage. But they felt that the individuals that would sit in a box they would want to be seen. And so they weren't really all that interested in seeing what was happening on stage. So it's a really interesting history. And I just love the idea that back during that time, A, they wanted to put the city back to work, and B, that they built a theater that was truly for the people. And it was before the World's Fair there. So the theater was built
How
right
many
there.
seats? How many seats?
4,000 seats.
That's right. That's what made it remarkable too, to be in a city
Yep.
or a venue that large.
And it's where the Chicago Symphony had its start. And at the time, there was no lyric opera. So the Auditorium Theater would welcome the Metropolitan Opera a couple times a year to Chicago. It has a very fascinating history, actually. It was the first theater with electric lighting. And over the years, I mean, they welcomed everyone from Pavlova to Caruso. So if you stand on the stage, especially at the end of a night when everything has shut down and you're in the middle of the stage with that ghost light, it's a very eerie feeling
Oh, I
knowing all
bet.
the spirits that have come
Gives
through
me
there.
chills. Gives me
Yeah.
chills.
Mm-hmm.
So you love Chicago. What did you love about Chicago?
Oh, it's such a vibrant city, I tell you. And, you know, it's a little cold in the winter.
I was thinking when you moved there, I said, this is a Cubana. How long is she going to last in that
Well,
cold lake
I wasn't there
air?
long enough. I got to tell you, I wasn't there long enough to get tired of the cold, but it is brutally cold and it does last for a long time. And I think
Oh,
that's the worst part is that it does last for a long time. I remember one May, we had gone to the theater and we decided to walk home. We lived right across the street from Maggie Daley Park, right there, you know, where Millennium Park is. And we decided to walk home from the theater. It was May. I'm not kidding. It was like May 20th. And as we were walking home, it started to snow.
oh my goodness. Yeah.
So it just lasted a little too long.
And
But I
so,
didn't leave. I mean, it wasn't the weather that made me leave for Miami. I got a call from Miami City Ballet. And frankly, the idea of going home, and my parents were getting older, and I just thought, when I am ready to go home, there may not be an opportunity for me to go home professionally. So I should just seize the moment. Again, I should just walk through the door and take this opportunity. But, you
were
know,
they aware of your background? You talked about curating and your first job and loving to do that. So they know that you brought ballet back to the auditorium in a big way, right? So they are aware of that, correct?
they were aware that I had trained as a ballet dancer
Mhm.
and that, you know, our family life revolves around ballet. They were also aware that I had been a dance presenter for a long time. Everywhere I've ever worked, every performing arts center, I have been committed to being a dance presenter. But the most important thing is that what they needed was an executive director who was focused on the business part of the organization. And they wanted somebody who could fundraise, and they wanted somebody that could really run the business.
And you just said it. A lot of your value as an observer in your career is that you've been in the trenches. You're an artist. You can speak with that passion when you're talking to a donor, right? And you know, you've done it. So you can speak on behalf of artists and why this is important to support. Would you agree with that?
I agree with that 100%. And I also think that having that lens of a balance between mission and money, it can't all be about the artwork disregarding the money, because that gets you into trouble
Yeah.
pretty quickly. And it
Yeah.
can't be all about the money without really paying attention to what you're doing with the art. So it's that balance of mission and money that is really important to be able to move these organizations forward. And in a producing organization, which Miami City Ballet is a producing organization versus a presenting organization, which is what I had done in Chicago and in Carmel and in Tennessee before that. In a producing organization, there's usually an artistic leader and a business leader, an executive leader. And so at the ballet and symphony orchestras, you have the music director. And so In theater companies, you have the artistic director and also the general manager or the executive director. So in those producing organizations, it's a bifurcated leadership structure where you have two leaders, the artistic and the executive. And so I went to Miami City Ballet to be the executive director and to lead a major fundraising campaign.
And you worked alongside Lourdes?
Yes, Lourdes Lopez.
Yes. Has she left or is she still involved?
I think she's
Are they
there.
still on a
She's
search?
there. Yeah, she's there through the end of the fiscal year. Oh,
So
she
you
might have
work
left.
together.
Yeah, because their fiscal year, I think, is already over.
And this
So
is the cool thing about the arts community. It's 2 degrees of separation. And recently, I visited Florida a couple of times and made some friendships. And through those friendships, I met Toby Anson, the founder of Miami City Ballet. And then quickly we established, once I brought up Indianapolis, oh, you happen to know Tanya, or it was something like that. And of course, she was on this podcast and we talked about you. Were your ears burning?
yes.
She holds you up as just, she loved you, Tanya. And I know she's listening. For those who hadn't heard that show, Toby founded Miami City Ballet. And actually, I checked out on Wikipedia, was looking for some facts, and they say that Edward Villela founded it. Well, she technically was the founder, and she hired him at her dining room table, as she tells it, right? And so, I mean, it's got this history and it's got this artistic track record. And, you're mess because you, like you did at Carmel, you brought them to where they are now.
Well, that's really kind of you to say, and that's really kind of Toby to say as well. And Toby is one of the most fierce women I have ever met. And you are right. That story about her being around her dining room table with 6 friends, and each one of them put in $1,000 to bring in Edward Villela down, and she made that happen. So she was the force behind the project and she made it happen. And all these years later, she is still going strong behind Miami City Ballet. She was just honored by the company during their recent gala, a very well-deserved honor. So she's one of those leaders in the city of Miami that really moved the art forward for the entire community.
What did she teach you, even though you had a great deal of experience? Was there anything you learned from Toby directly?
Toby, so one of the things that I did when I came in to meet with them is I had lunch with Toby. And Toby understands that reverence to tradition and reverence to the past, but also always keeping your eye on the future.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is so important for leaders to understand. And Toby did that so well. She understood about leadership transitions. She both on the board and within the company, both for the artist and the staff. But it's just this honoring of the past, of what happened in the past, of that foundation, but also looking toward the future with new leadership, new dancers, new choreographies. She's very, very smart, and she doesn't allow the past to hold the company from moving forward.
And, her networking skills, impeccable, like yours were. I remember watching you work a crowd. That sounds kind of cynical. I don't mean to be, but, that's what fundraisers do. I mean, when I was an arts administrator, my best work was done at black tie dinners because you meet the decision makers there and you get to know
Well, if you love the work, if you believe in the work,
yes,
I have to tell you, I don't think I could ever fundraise for something I didn't really believe in.
exactly.
And I do think Toby truly believes in that power of dance to change the community, to change
It's
individuals.
compelling, her message, and the communicate that mission to communicate an intangible like one's mission is not easy. But if you can do it with passion, people get excited and they want to help you, right? It's
People
pretty.
do get excited. And I have to tell you, there's this great quote that when I moved to Chicago, it's all over Chicago because Daniel Burnham, famous architect who built a lot of Chicago actually, has this fantastic quote that says, "Make no little plans, for they have no magic to stir men's blood." And
Ah,
that's exactly what you're saying right now. It's that you have a big vision that you can really inspire individuals, capture their imagination. They are going to come along with you on that big vision.
Mhm.
And that's what I discovered at Miami City Ballet when we launched that campaign, because when I arrived there, we did not have an intention of launching a large campaign. And we launched the largest campaign that Miami City Ballet had ever undertaken. It was $55 million. And we did complete the campaign with $65 million.
Wow,
It
congratulations.
was a really great campaign, and everybody was on board with that campaign. And I'm not
Uh-huh.
saying it's easy. It's never easy, whether you're raising 5 million, 55 million, or 500 million. It's never easy. It's a lot of work.
The impact that Miami City Ballet has made around the world, I often make it to other cities just to keep my skills up. I mean, we need to have an arbiter, something to measure against. And so I'm privileged to often be able to go to like New York, for instance, or Chicago. And I see these programs, and Miami City Ballet is everywhere in terms of people who've trained there, gone to school there. Its impact is worldwide, and they're one of the few ballet companies. They're the top tier. They tour a lot, do they not?
It depends on the year. And I know that they're touring this year again. Because of the COVID years, there were several
Yeah.
years there that the company just could not tour. But they do. They tour and have toured quite a bit, both within the United States and in Europe as
Are
well.
you bringing in the Sarasota or have you?
Well, I haven't, because I don't have a performing arts center yet. So
Oh,
the
okay. Well,
process.
that's what we're going there now. Tell me about your
Yes.
new place of employment.
So I received a call back in 2023 from a big search firm called Russell Reynolds, and they just wanted to talk to me and let me know about this opportunity in Sarasota. And at the time, the family was headed to Japan. We were headed to a big trip, a big family trip to Japan. And I said, well, why don't we talk when I come back? And so we did. About a month later, we connected, and they started talking to me about the project. It seemed like a really once in a lifetime opportunity to create a legacy project. And they told me that they had just selected their architect, and the architect is the world famous architect, Renzo Piano. And so Renzo has done some of the most iconic buildings in the world. He did the Centre Pompidou in Paris, which is back in the late 70s, which is what got him the Pritzker Award. He's done the Shard in England. He's done the Center for in LA for where they do the Oscars. I forgot the name of it, but it's that center where they do have a beautiful
Yes.
theater
Yeah,
where they do the Oscars. But he has done so many buildings all over the world. And so the thought of working with somebody like Renzo Piano on a new building to build it from scratch and do that in a place like Sarasota, Florida, I just thought it was a really interesting opportunity. So again, the door opened and I decided to walk through it. And so I spent many, many months in conversation with Sarasota. Like I said, these searches take a long time. From the moment I started talking to them to the moment that I actually started the job was probably about 10 months.
were you in competition with many people?
You always are, but you
Yeah.
never know who those other people are, right? So that's all kept very confidentially, but
Sure.
you always are in competition with other
Sure.
people.
So was it hard walking away from Miami City Ballet? I mean, you wouldn't be human if you didn't have some grieving, right?
So I had stepped down from the position at Miami City Ballet at the end of the campaign. So once the
Oh,
campaign ended, I stepped down from the Miami City Ballet position. And so I didn't need to make that decision. I was doing some executive work for another organization in Miami called Light Arts. I was serving as their interim CEO
okay.
and really enjoyed that because that was a short term project, but I really enjoyed that because it brought me into the world of visual arts, which I
Mhm.
had never been part of.
My last trip to Miami, I have to tell you, I visited Little Havana and I thought about you a lot. And I thought, well, because, being Latino, being a Mexicano, the Cuban culture music, its history. I'm just so enamored and intrigued with it. And so I got to visit little Havana, and I'll take it. That represents a tiny little sliver. But I spent most of a day there, and I was so happy to be there. I can't tell you, it was just a wonderful experience. So, being a Cuban American, what was that like living in Miami, which is little Havana, little Cuba, if you will?
So, I mean, Miami is such a large city now, and it really, I mean, I grew up there from, I mentioned I had left Cuba as a child and I grew up in Miami. So I did grow up in Miami, but Miami is a completely different city today than it was when I was growing up. And when I was growing up, it was mostly the non-native born were mostly from Cuba. But today, Miami is such a mix of cultures and ethnicities and people from all over the world.
Yeah.
There are of course a lot of Cubans, but there are a lot of Venezuelans, there are a lot of Colombians, there are a lot of Brazilians. I mean, it is really a big,
A little Latin America now.
it really is, and also a lot of Europeans. So it is a very different city, I have to say. I loved going back to Miami, and even now we still have our home there, and we go back every month. So we go and spend a weekend or a couple days there every month because my family's still there, my father's still there, and my siblings are still there. So we go back every month. It's just a short drive away across Alligator Alley,
Mhm.
across the Everglades. And I was just there last week. We're going to go again next week for a day.
I'm sorry, did you lose your mother?
I did lose my mother. Yes, I
When was
did.
that?
And it
I
was really
had
tough.
when they visited you in Carmel. I remember that.
Yeah, you remember her. She would go,
Yes.
she was so you when you talk about how happy you were in Miami and there's just such joy in the Cuban people. And my mother certainly had that. She was so full of joy and she loved being with friends and family. She loved a party. She came to Carmel multiple times, came to our New Year's Eve celebrations at the Palladium. And she also came to Chicago. I mean, everywhere I would go, my mother would come because she loved the theater. She loved
What does she
music.
think about your success? Both of your parents.
Well, they're very happy, with my professional success. I think they're happier with the fact that I have wonderful children and,
Uh,
they're very, very
you made
family.
them abuelos, so
I
that's
did.
enough right
Yes,
there. Yeah.
I did.
And I bet you they doted on them, or they dote, your father at least.
Mhm.
So, okay, your children, I was also intrigued by, their father is Russian and you're Cuban, and being exposed to those two cultures, and then, of course, the American culture. So they're like three cultures. How did they absorb that? I'm just like really curious about that.
Well, it's like living on the, what do you call it? On the, I'm going to forget this.
Speak
When
all those, they speak Russian, they speak Spanish,
they
correct?
don't speak Russian. No, they do
Oh,
not speak Russian.
okay.
And they speak a little Spanish, but much like I was growing up, my parents would speak to me in Spanish and I would respond in English.
Gotcha.
And then once you pass those teenage years,
Yeah,
then get over that.
yeah,
But
yeah.
they're very American kids, but
Sure.
the culture seep in every day with our music, with our food, language.
Do you do a fusion menu in your home of Russian and Cuban?
We do Russian mostly on holidays, but it's mostly Cuban food.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's
Well,
mostly
that was
Cuban
part of
food.
the reason I love Little Havana because I had the beefsteak and I had the arroz and the beans and oh my God, I was in heaven. It was wonderful.
We do more Cuban food than Russian. And what we do every single day is we do
Yeah.
Cuban coffee.
Yeah.
And so
Well,
we
I know that you have an appointment following this, and I'm so happy that you agreed to spend this time with me. No, you're one of those people that out of sight doesn't necessarily mean out of mind, okay?
Oh, that's so sweet. Well,
But
I love to talk with you, and we're at the very start of this project in Sarasota, this Renzo Piano project. And it's not unlike the project in Carmel. It's a
yes,
public-private
sounds like
partnership.
it. It
And
sounds like it, but you're going to be really on the ground floor of this is because you're
yes,
going to help them invent the structure and everything of
that's
the
right.
organization, right?
That's right. And one difference here is that the building is expected to present Broadway, which, as you know,
Wow.
in Carmel does not present Broadway.
Yeah.
Those Broadway tours go to Indianapolis. So that's the one difference with this building project. But it is a very exciting because
Well,
in Carmel,
your knowledge of architecture, design, and all of that, just from your experience in being in those four different centers, you know what's needed
yes,
to present, right?
absolutely, absolutely. And again, we have the best of the best as an architect. So we are at the very ground floor of this, and this is, as you know, with the building in Carmel, this is a years-long project.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing about going to Carmel now and remembering when they opened and the promise it held. And a lot of people thought it was a white elephant. It was very controversial, but look what they did. Vision, 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 right?
Vision, exactly.
So
Vision.
you get to do that. That's very cool. Okay, well, I miss you and I'll stay in touch. You know, this may prompt me to go down to see your new center and it'll be great.
Oh, we'd love to have you here. The sunsets in Sarasota are the most beautiful that I have ever seen.
So you like Sarasota?
Oh, very much. Yes, very much.
What makes
I
it special?
Well, I mean, it's a really, again, it's just the geography of it. Like I said, the sunsets here, the colors here are really remarkable. And it is a much smaller place than Miami. I mean, Miami is now approaching 3 million people in Miami-Dade County. 3
Yeah.
million. It's approaching 3
Wow.
million. That's
Well,
huge.
people are
Sarasota
gonna
County
listen.
is tiny compared to that.
I have listeners around the country, and I know all the snowbirds after hearing you talk about Sarasota. Look for an influx, maybe.
Well, it was just recently voted as the #1 place to retire to.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Well, please give my best to Alexei and good luck in your new adventure and hope to see you soon.
Thank you, Tom, so much. How joyful to speak with you today.
Our thanks go out to our media sponsor, Urban Times. Urban Times is a monthly news magazine which serves as the official newsletter for 15 Indianapolis neighborhoods, offering news about development, arts and entertainment, and from the business community. Thank you for joining me on the aisle. Please subscribe to my podcast, and if you want to hear previous episodes, find them on the All Indiana Podcast Network, or listen to them wherever you get your podcasts. This is Tom Alvarez.
Who will take center stage on the podcast next? Your seat on the aisle with Tom Alvarez awaits. Follow Tom on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, and make sure to visit tomalvarez.studio. Watch Tom every other Thursday on Lifestyle Live on Wish TV, and make sure to listen every week here on the All Indiana Podcast Network.